They never imagined the day would come when the weight of their own actions would circle back and rest on their shoulders. People often assume that the darkness they send toward others will simply disappear into the air, carried away by time or silence. They forget that every act, every intention, every hidden scheme is recorded in a place far beyond human courts, a place where the truth is never mistaken, where motives cannot be disguised, and where justice does not delay simply because the offender believes they've escaped. And now, somewhere in the quiet corridors of their life, someone is pamp. But because God, in His perfect timing, has begun to return the very evil they crafted back to the source from which it came. There is a trembling that grips the heart when a person realizes that the harvest they mocked is finally appearing in their own field. The one who lied about you, the one who embarrassed you, the one who tried to strip you of what you rightfully earned, they are now facing the same storm they wished upon you. And the most haunting part for them is not the consequence itself, but the sudden awareness that it is no coincidence. Something deep within them knows the truth. This is the echo of their own hands. This is the shadow of their own choices. This is justice wrapped in divine silence. You see, God does not shout when He moves. He does not need thunder or noise to correct what humans try to twist. His justice often arrives like dawn, unexpectedly, quietly, but undeniably. They thought they could hide behind manipulation, behind gossip, behind the fragile shield of people who applauded their cruelty, but the truth is that no alliance of wrongdoers is strong enough to defend against the moment God decides the scale must be balanced. And now that moment has begun. The very trap they set for you has become the hole they fell into. The very rumors they spread have become the whispers that now follow them. The humiliation they tried to place on your shoulders has slipped off and returned to their own life like a cloak they can't remove. They feel the eyes of others. They feel the shift in the air. They feel the consequences tightening around them. And they panic because deep down they understand this is not random. This is not bad luck. This is not a misunderstanding. This is God saying, I saw what you did. The irony is that they were confident when they acted, confident when they lied, confident when they betrayed you, confident when they mocked your pain. They thought your silence meant defeat. They thought your patience meant weakness. They thought your trust in God meant you were naive. They thought you were alone. But they have now discovered that the one who taught you to stay silent was the same one who was preparing their judgment. What they did against you planted a seed, and God, the keeper of all seeds, chose the right season to let it sprout. Not to hurt them unnecessarily, but to remind the universe that nothing done in darkness goes unseen. Nothing done with intent to destroy the innocent will remain uncorrected. They did not fear consequences then, but now their nights are long, their peace is thin, and their thoughts return again and again to the memory of how they treated you. There is a kind of fear that humans cannot escape, the fear of being confronted by the results of their own actions. It keeps them awake. It steals their courage. It makes their hands tremble when no one else is watching. That is the fear visiting them now. They never expected the circle to close. They never expected their schemes to return home. They never expected their own cruelty to have such a long memory. But God remembered, and because He remembered, He acted, not in anger, but in perfect justice. You were never forgotten. You were never unprotected. And though they believed they were winning, they had no idea that every step they took against you was a step toward their own downfall. That is why someone is panicking now. Not because life is falling apart, but because they know exactly why it is falling apart. Their fear is the loudest confession of guilt, and your peace is the loudest proof of God's hand on your life. There comes a moment in every life when a person can no longer outrun the truth they created with their own hands. For a long time they believed their actions would never return to them. They believed that the seeds of malice they threw around carelessly would simply disappear into the soil of time. They assumed that because you stayed quiet, because you did not retaliate, because you did not expose them, the matter was finished. But now, as events unfold around them, events so strangely familiar, so painfully reflective of the harm they once aimed at you, they feel something they never expected to feel. Fear. Real fear. The kind that wraps itself around the heart and squeezes with a weight no human explanation can remove. And this fear is not random. It is the fear born from the realization that the consequences they face are not accidents at all, but a mirror held up by God Himself. People forget that the universe remembers intent. They forget that actions have a life of their own, a path that eventually circles back to where they started. When someone chooses to sabotage another, when someone chooses to lie, when someone chooses to manipulate or deceive, they think their victory will be permanent. They enjoy the advantage of the moment, the applause of those who don't know the truth, the temporary relief of having damaged someone else to protect their own image. But what they don't see is that every intention becomes a seed, and every seed has a harvest. They believed the harvest would never find them. They believed the darkness they crafted would remain hidden, absorbed, forgotten. Yet now, in the quiet hours when the world slows down and their thoughts grow louder than their pride, something inside them whispers the truth. This is happening because of what you did. It is not life being cruel. It is not fate being unkind. It is not a coincidence, nor a sudden streak of bad luck. Their panic is the confession of their soul finally recognizing that what they are experiencing is the return of the harm they once directed toward you. They feel cornered by circumstances they cannot control, exposed by situations they cannot deny, and weighed down by emotions they cannot silence. They feel chased, not by you, but by the echo of their own actions. There is a particular kind of terror that grips a person when they understand their suffering is self-created. It is the terror of standing face to face with one's own shadow. They may try to hide from it. They may try to justify it. They may even try to blame others for it. But no excuse can quiet the internal knowing that this is justice, not coincidence. Their conscience, which they once silenced with arrogance, is speaking louder than ever now, and that inner voice refuses to let them escape the truth. What troubles them the most is not merely the situation they face, but the sudden clarity that it is connected to what they did to you. They remember the conversations where they twisted facts. They remember the strategies they used to humiliate you. They remember the moments they enjoyed your discomfort. They remember the ease with which they betrayed someone who never intended harm. And now they see those same patterns shaping their own life. Broken trust, damaged reputation, unexpected loss, failed relationships, opportunities slipping away. Every piece fits too neatly, too perfectly, too purposefully for them to deny the divine handwriting behind it. The panic they feel is the awakening of a truth they hoped to avoid. The cycle has turned, and God has allowed their own deeds to knock at their door. They once felt powerful when they inflicted pain, but now they feel powerless as that pain returns, multiplied by the weight of divine justice. And as much as they may try to resist what is happening, they cannot. Because what they are facing is not human revenge. It is the universe correcting itself. It is God answering the cries you never voiced. It is righteousness returning to balance what wrongdoing tried to distort. They are panicking because, deep down, they know. This is the harvest of their own intentions. They are reaping what they believed they would never have to face. And the fear that now consumes them is proof that even if they didn't care then, they care now, because God has returned their evil back to them, and they can no longer escape the truth of what they sowed. Silence often frightens those with a guilty conscience more than any spoken truth. When God begins to move, he does not announce his steps. He does not send warnings or echo thunder across the skies. He works in the stillness, in the quiet unfolding of events, in the subtle alignment of circumstances that cannot be explained away by chance. This quietness unsettles the ones who once felt bold enough to harm you. They look around and sense a shift they cannot name, a rearranging they cannot control. What once felt stable now trembles. What they relied on begins to weaken. And in that silence, they feel the weight of an unseen justice, pressing gently but firmly against their life. God's way of balancing what has been distorted is never loud, yet it is always precise. He does not need dramatic displays to reveal the truth. Light exposes what darkness tries to hide without making a sound. Those who acted against you believed their actions were safely concealed behind their confident smiles and rehearsed words. They trusted the cover of secrecy, believing human eyes were the only eyes that mattered. But the one who sees the heart watched it all. The motives, the manipulation, the quiet cruelty, the satisfaction they felt when they thought they had succeeded. Now, as life begins to reflect their intentions back at them, they realize the truth they dismissed. Nothing escapes divine awareness. They may have fooled people, but they never fooled God. The consequences unfolding in their life feel strangely personal, as if crafted specifically for them, because that is exactly what divine justice does. It returns to the Maker the shape of what was made. Their panic grows each time something unexpected collapses or slips out of their control. They sense a pattern forming behind the chaos, a thread connecting every failure, every disappointment, every sudden loss. It dawns on them that the same methods they used to harm you are now the very forces unraveling their stability. Lies begin to circle back as truth. Manipulation returns as broken trust. Betrayal revisits them in the form of shattered relationships. What once felt like cleverness now feels like a curse, with their name carved into its center. Your silence plays a painful role in this. They cannot accuse you of revenge. They cannot blame you for speaking against them. They cannot point to any action of yours to justify what is happening. You have done nothing but remain still, and that stillness terrifies them. They know the consequences cannot be traced to your hands, so they begin to understand whose hands are truly involved. It is not your defense they fear. It is God's. People forget how powerful justice becomes when delivered without noise. They expected retribution to come through confrontation, arguments, or public exposure. They did not consider that the quiet turning of God's hand could be far more devastating than anything you could ever have done. Their life begins to unravel, not through dramatic punishment, but through gentle, undeniable correction. And that subtlety cuts deeper than any loud downfall ever could. As events continue to unfold, their mind becomes their greatest enemy. Every small misfortune feels connected. Every unexpected difficulty feels meaningful. Every quiet moment is filled with thoughts they can no longer silence. They replay memories of how they treated you, realizing the moments they laughed at your pain now echo as warnings in their own heart. They start to understand that their suffering aligns too perfectly with their past actions to be coincidence. The silence of God becomes the loudest message they have ever received. Understanding this truth does not bring them comfort. Instead, it awakens a fear they have never known. Fear not of being caught by people, but of being seen by the one who cannot be deceived. They begin to grasp that justice does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And whispered justice can be far more terrifying to the guilty than any shouted accusation. Their panic is not caused solely by the consequences, but by the sudden clarity of who is behind them. They finally recognize that the justice unfolding in their life is not human vengeance, but divine intervention. And once that realization anchors itself in their mind, the fear becomes inescapable. God saw what they did. God remembered. And now, quietly and precisely, God is responding. The quiet irony of divine justice is that the very trap designed to break an innocent soul often becomes the place where the architect of that trap is brought to their knees. The one who dug a pit for you assumed that you would fall into it helplessly, unaware and unprotected. They pictured your downfall vividly. They rehearsed it in their mind with satisfaction. They imagined the day you would stumble and they would stand above you, whispering, "I told you so." But life has a way of turning the soil back on the one who disturbed it. And now they find themselves slipping into the very circumstances they once crafted for you. What they intended for you has found its way home to them. The same tools they used, deception, manipulation, false accusation, humiliation, have become the forces tightening around their own life. Every action they took became a brick in the pit they dug. Every lie they spread became another shovel of dirt removed from the ground beneath their own feet. At the time, they didn't see it. They believed they were building a path toward their advantage. They believed harming you would elevate them. They believed stepping on you would place them higher. Yet now, with the shift of divine order unfolding, they realized the truth. They were always building their own downfall. This awakening comes slowly, painfully, and quietly. They look around and wonder why things are falling apart, why relationships crumble, why trust evaporates, why opportunities close, why doors that once opened easily now remain shut, sealed, unyielding. Something in them whispers the truth they don't want to admit. What they tried to bury has resurrected in a form they cannot escape. Their panic starts with small signs, tiny collapses, unexplained discomfort. But as more pieces of their life begin to mirror the harm they inflicted, the panic grows into a realization that cannot be silenced. They remember the moments they targeted you, the way they twisted conversations, the way they smiled while planning ways to ruin you, the way they involved others to strengthen their false narrative. They relive these memories now not with pride but with dread. The trap was supposed to capture you, not them. Yet here they are, entangled in consequences that feel uncannily familiar. It is as if life itself is saying, "This is what you intended for another. Now understand it for yourself." The most unsettling part of divine justice is that nothing appears dramatic from the outside. People may not realize what is happening. Those around them may not understand why their life is unraveling, but they know. The truth haunts them because it fits too perfectly. This isn't random. This isn't coincidence. This is symmetry. Perfect, undeniable symmetry. The kind only God can orchestrate. Your silence in all of this adds weight to their fear. They cannot blame you. You didn't retaliate. You didn't expose them. You didn't fight back or try to harm them in return. You simply walked away or stayed quiet, trusting that the one who saw everything would make truth visible in his own way. And now that truth is unfolding before their eyes. The fact that you had no involvement makes the consequences they face even more terrifying, because it leaves only one explanation. God stepped in. Nothing shakes a guilty person more than the realization that the innocent they tried to destroy is thriving while they are sinking. into the very darkness they intended to create. They thought causing your pain would give them power, but now the same pain is showing them how powerless they truly are. They thought they controlled the narrative, but now the narrative is revealing who they really are. They thought they could trap you without consequence, but now the trap has become their own confinement. This is why panic fills their heart. They understand that the downfall they face is shaped in the exact form of what they once wished upon you. They are learning a harsh truth. When God protects someone, any harm intended for that person becomes the downfall of the one who planned it. And as that truth settles into their conscience, they can no longer deny what is happening. They are not victims of misfortune. They're standing inside the very pit they dug, only now realizing it was meant for themselves all along. Silence is a language only the wise understand, and only the guilty fear. Your decision to remain calm, to avoid fighting back, to refuse to match their cruelty with your own, was never a sign of weakness. It was the quiet strength of someone who knows that truth does not need noise to defend itself. They mistook your gentleness for defeat. They believed your patience meant surrender. They assumed your refusal to retaliate came from fear, but they never realized that the silence surrounding you was not the silence of a wounded heart. It was the silence of God at work. Every moment you stayed calm felt to them like an invitation to push further. They believed they could speak over you, manipulate your story, twist your intentions, or tarnish your name without consequence. Each time you chose not to answer, they thought you had nothing left to say. Each time you turned away, they believed you were too fragile to fight. They did not understand that stepping back was not the same as stepping down. It was the posture of someone who places their battles in the hands of a higher judge. What confused them most was your lack of reaction. They expected tears, anger, retaliation, exposure. They waited for you to crumble. They anticipated your downfall as if it were already written, yet your stillness frustrated them, because it revealed none of the chaos they hoped to create. They could not understand how a heart they tried so hard to break remained steady, unshaken, almost serene. Your silence became a mirror, reflecting their own actions back at them, and they hated the reflection. Now, as consequences unfold in their life, that same silence torments them. They cannot accuse you. They cannot point to revenge. They cannot claim you destroyed them. The truth of their downfall has only one explanation, and it terrifies them. God defended you. The realization creeps in, slowly at first, like a shadow that grows longer with time. Small moments of failure, slight misfortunes, strange repetitions of the harm they once directed at you begin to form a pattern they can no longer deny. Every time they recall your silence, they feel a deeper unease, because it becomes clear that your restraint was never a sign of fear, but a sign of divine protection. Silence has a way of exposing motives. While you remained still, their every action became louder. Their cruelty became visible. Their intentions grew transparent. The more they tried to harm you, the more their true nature showed. And the more their true nature showed, the more isolated they became. People slowly began to see through their facade. Allies disappeared. Admiration faded. Respect dissolved. They thought they were winning, but all they were doing was revealing themselves. Your silence also gave God space to act without interference. Had you retaliated, the story would have looked like a conflict between two people. But because you stepped aside, everyone, especially them, must now face the truth that the consequences unfolding in their life are not human-made. They are divine. They are precise. They are unmistakably aligned with their own behavior. And they can no longer hide behind excuses or blame. A conscience that has awakened in the presence of divine justice becomes restless. Every quiet moment that once gave them comfort now fills them with dread. They remember the words they used to hurt you. They remember the confidence with which they lied. They remember how they enjoyed seeing you misunderstood, isolated, or ashamed. Those memories return to them now with sharper edges, cutting deeper than they ever cut you. Your silence, once mocked, has become the most powerful testimony against them. It stands as proof that you never wished them harm. It stands as evidence that you placed your trust in God, not in retaliation. And because you did not return their evil, God returned it for you. Accurately, appropriately, and undeniably. Their panic grows because they finally recognize that the quietness they once despised was the shield God placed around you. They realize the strength they misinterpreted was the reason they are now facing the consequences alone. They understand your silence was never emptiness. It was the presence of God, working quietly, steadily, and faithfully on your behalf. Every word spoken with the intention to harm becomes a shadow that follows its speaker, even if that shadow remains unseen for a time. When they spread lies about you, they did it with confidence, believing their voice held enough power to shape how others perceived you. They crafted rumors with precision, convinced that their version of the story would stand unchallenged. They delivered accusations with rehearsed conviction, assuming no one would question their motives. In other words, each sentence was designed like a small arrow, meant to pierce your reputation, your peace, and your sense of stability. They believed these arrows would fly only in one direction, toward you. But words never die. They echo, they return, they reveal, and the same whispers they used against you are now circling their life like restless truths, seeking a place to land. The panic they feel today comes from recognizing their own voice in the chaos surrounding them. When relationships crumble unexpectedly, they hear an echo of the relationships they tried to ruin for you. When trust slips through their fingers, they recognize the flavor of the trust they once shattered. When people question their integrity, they feel the sting of doubts they planted in others about you. Their own words have become their judges. Rumors have a strange way of traveling. They do not stay loyal to the one who sends them out. They drift, they shift, they gather weight, and eventually they return to the one who crafted them. They believed they were safe because they had influence, because they had allies, because they could persuade others with their charm or authority. But the truth is stronger than charm, and justice sees beyond influence. The lies they constructed now float around them like scattered fragments of a story they can no longer control. As these fragments come together, people begin to question the very person who once seemed so convincing. Suspicion grows, doubt spreads, conversations change tone, trust diminishes, and they feel it. They feel the shift in how people look at them, how they speak to them, how they distance themselves. Panic rises because they know exactly why this is happening. Life is returning to them the very tools of destruction they used against you. Life is offering them the very tools of destruction they used against you. The torment of this return does not come from the words themselves, but from their recognition of how accurately those words mirror their past actions. Every whisper they hear reminds them of the whispers they once created. Every uncomfortable conversation they endure reflects the discomfort they once caused. Every accusation they face echoes the accusations they once enjoyed aiming at you. What they meant as harm for you has become a revelation for them, a revelation that exposes the truth they tried to bury under lies. Your resilience adds a painful contrast to their situation. They expected their rumors to break you. They believed their lies would slow you down, isolate you, or force you to fight for a reputation they tried to crush. Yet you remained calm. You did not run after people trying to explain yourself. You did not chase validation. You did not plead for understanding. That calmness became your shield. More importantly, it became their torment. When you refused to react, their lies lost fuel. When you stayed quiet, their accusations began to feel hollow. When you kept your peace, people began to wonder why someone so composed was being targeted so aggressively. The more you remained unshaken, the more their lies started to betray their true character. Their words meant to destroy you ended up revealing who they were instead. This reversal is what terrifies them now. The same fire they set has begun to burn on their side. The same poison they mixed for you is circling back into their own life. The same narrative they tried to create about you is now forming around them in ways they cannot control. And because they understand this process so intimately, because they know exactly how lies spread, how reputations crumble, how trust breaks, they feel a fear only the guilty can feel. Their panic is not simply about losing the respect of others. It is about facing the truth they crafted with their own tongue. It is about realizing that the harm they intended for you has returned with precision, shaping their present in the same image as their past actions. And as each day unfolds, they can no longer deny what is happening. The very rumors they used to harm you have become the whispers unraveling their own peace. A guilty conscience is a quiet companion until the day justice awakens it. They once walked with confidence, believing their actions could be hidden behind charm, excuses, or the passage of time. They convinced themselves that what they did to you was justified, forgotten, or irrelevant. But now, as the weight of their own choices presses down on them, something inside has begun to stir, a realization they cannot silence, an understanding they cannot outrun. The inner voice they ignored for so long has finally risen, and its message is unmistakable. The consequences unfolding in their life are connected to what they once did to you. Human beings often fear external judgment, yet the sharpest judgment comes from within. When the heart recognizes its own betrayal, it trembles. When the mind revisits its own cruelty, it grows restless. When the soul confronts its own dishonesty, it loses peace. This inner battle is what they are experiencing now. Every difficulty feels strangely familiar, as though life has chosen to speak to them in the same language they used to harm you, and deep down, beneath all their defenses, they know this is no coincidence. The awareness does not arrive in a single moment. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow stretching across a room as the sun sets. A small misfortune reminds them of a misfortune they tried to cause you. A broken relationship mirrors a connection they once broke in your life. The feeling of being misunderstood echoes the misunderstanding they fueled against you. With every passing day, the patterns become clearer, and with every pattern, their conscience grows louder. This clarity is not something they can confess to others. They hide it under forced smiles, under casual words, under the facade of normalcy. But when they are alone, when the distractions fade and the silence grows thick, their thoughts turn inward. In that solitude, they replay their past actions, not as victorious moments, but as scenes filled with regret, selfishness, and cruelty. They remember the exact choices they made. They remember how easily they dismissed your feelings. They remember the smug satisfaction they felt when they believed they had gotten away with hurting you. And now those memories return with a new weight, demanding acknowledgement. The most haunting part of this recognition is how precisely their current suffering matches their past behavior. It feels tailored, specific, almost poetic. And poetry is something the guilty cannot bear when the subject is themselves. They look at their life and see a reflection of their own hands shaping their pain. They see divine fingerprints on every moment, that mirrors what they once inflicted, and because they cannot blame you, because you never retaliated, never fought back, never returned their harm, the realization becomes sharper. This is the echo of their own actions. A guilty conscience does not need anyone to punish it. It punishes itself. It creates fear where fear did not exist before. It turns small problems into storms. It transforms every silence into a reminder. They wake up with a heaviness they cannot explain. They go through their day feeling watched by their own past. They try to distract themselves, but nothing fully removes the sense that something is closing in. A truth, a consequence, a reflection long overdue. At times they argue with themselves, trying to justify what they did. They try to label their actions as mistakes, misunderstandings, or necessary choices. But the heart does not bend to excuses. The heart remembers intention. And intention is what now returns to them in the form of lessons disguised as troubles. Each lesson is shaped with uncanny precision. Each difficulty matches a harm they once dismissed. Each consequence mirrors a choice they thought was forgotten. The panic they feel comes from this undeniable clarity. They know why their peace is gone. They know why doors are closing. They know why relationships crumble, opportunities fail, and whispers rise around them. Life is returning their actions with divine accuracy, and their conscience, once quiet, once ignored, now whispers the truth louder than ever. This is the result of what you did. They cannot escape this knowledge. They cannot silence it. They cannot rewrite it. The echo of their choices has become their reality, and their conscience has become their judge. And in understanding this fully, they feel a fear only the guilty can feel. The fear of recognizing that the justice unfolding in their life is not random but deserved. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict. It is the quiet signature of God on a life He has chosen to protect. When they look at you now, they do not see the broken soul they once expected to find. They do not see the person they tried to weaken with rumor, rejection, or betrayal. Instead, they see someone who survived every hidden attack without becoming bitter. Someone who walked through the fire without smelling of smoke. Someone who somehow grew calmer as their efforts to hurt you grew stronger. And this tranquility you carry, the serenity they never expected, is what disturbs them the most. Their panic deepens every time they realize you are not suffering as they hoped. They wanted your life to crumble, your heart to collapse, your spirit to bend under the weight of their schemes. They thought you would lose sleep, lose direction, lose faith. But when they look at you, they see none of the destruction they imagined. They see stability. They see resilience. They see a peace they cannot comprehend. And because they know what they intended, your peace becomes evidence. Evidence that God stepped between you and their harm. The contrast between your calm and their chaos grows sharper with each passing day. While they crumble under the return of their own actions, you rise in a way that defies human logic. While they wrestle with consequences they once believed they were immune to, you continue walking with grace. While they feel surrounded by uncertainty, your life begins to reflect a quiet order, a divine alignment, a kind of protection that cannot be explained by simple luck. Your peace unsettles them because it exposes something they never wanted to accept. You were never fighting alone. When they attacked you, they assumed they were attacking someone unguarded. They thought you were vulnerable simply because you refused to retaliate. They mistook your kindness for fragility, your trust for naivety, your silence for weakness. But now, watching how you stand firm while they fall apart, they finally see the truth. They were never fighting you, They were fighting the one who guards your life. This realization terrifies them. It forces them to confront the possibility that every attempt to harm you was an act of rebellion against divine protection. They begin to understand that what they meant for evil became a tool God used to strengthen you and a weapon turned back on them. They start to recognize that while they plotted in secret, God was watching. While they tried to control the narrative, God was writing a different ending. While they tried to destroy your peace, God was building a deeper one within you. What unsettles them the most is how naturally your peace shines through you now. You do not brag. You do not boast. You do not gloat over their downfall. You simply continue living, breathing, growing, trusting. Your peace is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, gentle, and enduring. And this gentleness carries a quiet power that reveals the truth of the situation more clearly than any confrontation ever could. They see your life blossoming where they expected it to wither. They see blessings arriving where they hoped burdens would multiply. They see favor flowing into your path while obstacles rise in theirs. And the difference between your peace and their panic becomes impossible to ignore. It creates a silent testimony, one that points unmistakably to the hand of God. Your peace becomes their mirror. It reflects everything they did not expect to see: the strength of your character, the purity of your heart, the endurance of your spirit, and the undeniable evidence that God was with you even when you were misunderstood, mistreated, or underestimated. It shows them that while they were busy weaving harm, God was busy weaving restoration. Their panic comes from the deep inner knowing that the story has revealed its true author. They see now that the one who remained silent was the one God chose to defend. And they feel the weight of that truth, not because you wished them harm, but because your peace now stands as quiet proof that God fought for you, protected you, corrected the injustice, and returned every intention to its rightful owner. Every story of injustice eventually reaches a moment where truth stands taller than every lie ever spoken. You reach that moment not by fighting, not by proving yourself, not by forcing anyone to see what truly happened, but by trusting the quiet work of God. The ones who tried to harm you are now facing the return of their own actions, not because you wished it, but because God is a guardian of balance. And in His timing, He allows every intention to come home. You never needed to expose anyone. You never needed to defend your name loudly. You never needed to bend yourself into explanations. Your silence became the soil where God planted your vindication. And now the fruits of that trust are beginning to appear, not in the form of revenge, but in the form of restoration. What they meant to break has become your testimony. What they meant to wound has become your wisdom. What they meant to end has become your beginning. Let their panic remind you of how deeply God protected you. Let their regret remind you of how far God went to shield you. And let your peace remind you that you were never alone in the battle. The justice unfolding was never about their downfall. It was always about your protection, your healing, and your rising. Walk forward now with a steady heart. What was returned to them will not return to you. What was meant for your destruction has already been transformed. God saw everything. God remembered everything. And God has already covered everything. You are free to move ahead, untouched by what was meant to harm you, lifted by the very hand that defended you in silence, and guided into a future where nothing intended against you can ever prosper again.